I'm Blake Mallon, co-founder of Worn & Wound, and this is the 2020 Virtual Windup Watch Fair. We're excited to bring you an exclusive interview with Laurier founders Lauren and Lorenzo Ortega to discuss their latest release, the Hyperion GMT. We talk about what went into the design of the Hyperion and why they chose to use a Swiss movement for the first time, among other topics. Here's our interview with Lauren and Lorenzo. Lauren and Lorenzo Ortega, thank you so much for joining us for the Virtual Windup Watch Fair. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Thanks for having us.
So most Worn & Wound readers are going to be pretty familiar with Laurier and your work from the past few years. But for those who may not be as familiar as others, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourselves and about the brand?
Okay, well, like you said, we've been around for about 3 years. We're based in New York City.
And our goal as a brand is to make watches the way they were back in the 1950s, 1960s. Basically, the idea is to make it feel like you had grabbed a watch out of a time machine set to that era.
Yeah, we're really drawn to watches from that era because their design is very versatile. They're minimal. You can easily dress them up and down. But then also, like, the ethos behind them, most people bought a watch that they were going to wear every day. And
we're not collectors ourselves, and so that idea really appealed to us. You know, we have small wrists, and so we were looking for this one watch, and the suggestions were always, oh, get something vintage. But then vintage is really expensive.
And it's not reliable enough to wear every day at this point. You know, you kind of have to baby a vintage watch, and it's the only one of its kind at a certain point. So you have this obligation to protect it and baby it. And we want a watch that we can, you know, bang around and not have to worry about. And we couldn't find a watch like that for ourselves. And so we decided to get into the business and make our own.
Right. Bring back that romance of, oh yeah, this is your one watch that you could wear to an expedition, but also to your wedding.
Yeah. So now we have, at this point, we have 2 divers. We have the Neptune, which is like the classic minimal diver. We have the more sporty, funky skin diver of the Hydra, which is a dual crown, multi-purpose bezel. We have the Falcon, which is our like all-around field watch. The Gemini, which is our ideal chronograph. And we are just now today releasing the Hyperion, which is like our archetype of a GMT.
That's awesome. Yeah, you guys definitely have been like super busy in a very short amount of time. And in fact, not only have you released all of those lines, but even in 2020, you guys have refreshed a number of them. So before we get to the GMT, which I know is what many people are here to learn about, I did just want to touch a little bit on the fact that you guys have really kind of overhauled your existing line quite a bit so far. You know, with the Falcon and the Neptune getting a little bit slimmer, and with the Hydra really basically being a brand new watch. You know, can you sort of like briefly talk a little bit about why you decided to make those strategic changes to the existing watches?
Right. Well, it all started when we made the decision that we could use the more expensive Miyota 9 series movement. And one of the main advantages of that movement is its thinness. We were using a Seiko movement before, and it was great, but it was on the thicker side. And so for our cases to have the kind of elegant lines we wanted, we had to have them a certain size to kind of work with that thickness. It's all about proportions at the end of the day.
The Falcon is a really good example. Like in the back of our heads, the Falcon, we've kind of always wanted it to be a 36 millimeter watch, but with the Seiko movement, it would have been difficult to fit it in a case that would have been proportional.
It would have just been like a puck on your wrist, you know, like too thick for its small size.
So now with this thinner movement, we're a lot more flexible in case design, like Lauren was saying, and so we can really flesh out our original vision for each of our models.
Mm-hmm. And so the Falcon, it's much smaller now, and I think it really shines on its own. The Neptune is more true to a skin diver. And I'd say it because of its thinness, it's more compatible to a variety of wrist sizes as well. And
right,
then
yeah.
The Hydra, I mean, Lorenzo wanted to discontinue the Hydra.
It was competing with the Neptune originally, and it was losing.
Yeah, and so when we had initially like designed them in the first iterations, like these were all like variations, like how can we maximize this case? And how can we explore the different personalities using this case we had? And the Hydra, as much as we thought it was different and had a different vibe and had, you know, it was multi-purpose, people were confusing it. Like they would confuse the Hydra for the Neptune and vice versa. And so the goal was not, you know, achieved. And we went back to the drawing board, and we both really wanted to do a dual crown diver at one point. And so I kind of convinced Lorenzo to give the Hydra another chance, and we kept a lot of its most like elemental design features, but we really kind of fleshed it out. It's much more sporty and funky, and I think it definitely stands on its own now, and it really makes our collection stronger.
Yeah, well, I really like it. It's the watch that I have on right now. We have a sample in the office, so. Well, I think we should get on to sort of the star of the show of the interview. So you guys are launching today your new GMT. Can you talk a little bit about the watch, the design, the sort of inception, your ideas behind it?
Yeah, I think Lauren said earlier, it's our idealized version of the GMT archetype. So we wanted to put in all the things we love about a GMT that aren't really common anymore. So, for example, the loomed plastic bezel, the Pepsi bezel,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it has to be Pepsi.
The red GMT hand, the roulette date wheel, you know, gilt chaptering, which we use quite a bit. Honestly, we love it. And so just all the things we love about like the classic GMT that we think has so much, I don't know, there's so much lore and legend around like the Pepsi GMT. It just has so much swagger. So this is our most requested watch probably in the past 3 years. People have been asking us most frequently, can we have a GMT? Can we have a GMT? And so if you've been paying attention to our collection, here it is. This is our GMT, and I think it fits pretty well in our collection.
My next question on the list was why a GMT, which I guess that's the answer because all of your customers wanted one. So I think what's really also really compelling about the watch is the price. You guys have a very competitive price point on it, and I just wanted to understand a little bit from you guys, like why was it important for this to be a sub $1,000 GMT?
I mean, there's a certain segment of the watch enthusiast world that's very much concerned about watches as status symbols, as collectibles, and as luxury items, and that's not really our approach to watches or why we like them. I'm more concerned about getting a watch that I really love, that looks good on me, and that makes me feel like, you know, the version of myself I want to be in a certain
Blake,
way.
I think you said $7,000, but it's going to be priced at $799.
No, I said sub $1,000. Yeah, not $7,000.
Oh.
Yeah, he said sub 1,000.
Oh, sub 1,000. Oh, okay. My bad. Okay. Yeah, so it's going to be $799, which if you think about it, historically, right, the original GMT Master was $240 in 1958. In today's money, you know, adjusted for inflation, that's about $2,000. But back then, people didn't have, you know, gigantic student loans, housing costs less, healthcare costs less. And, you know, you fast forward to today, you know, we think that the $800 price point is where we want to be, where it's not something you necessarily have to baby. It's still kind of expensive for most people, but it's something you can save up to. Like it's not inaccessible.
Yeah, I mean, I think $800 is expensive for most people, but we're happy we're able to do it at this price.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation we often have at the Warner One office. You know, we talk a lot about watches that are less than $1,000, and you know, even for a lot of folks, like even when you're in the $500, $600, $700 price point, that's quite a bit of money. It's a major investment. So in this movement, you guys are using a Swiss or in this watch, you're using a Swiss movement, correct? Can you talk a little bit about that choice?
This GMT has the Soprod C125 in it, and
I mean, for independent watch brands like ourselves, like there's a limited number of options you can use.
right, right,
First of all,
right.
and so the field was pretty narrow. There was a Chinese GMT movement
right.
that we could have used, but if there's another movement alternative besides Chinese, most people respond better to that other movement, and so that left us with Swiss alternatives. And the Soprod was, by the time we were looking, was one that we could find that was accessible, that had a good delivery date for us. I mean, it was really just what we needed to be able to make this watch.
And our friends at Oak and Oscar have used the same movement, and we haven't heard any reports of it exploding or anything. And
So you talk about this board being an idealized version of a GMT watch, and you obviously have a Swiss movement in it, and you've achieved this really great price point. Were there any sort of like challenges you guys faced in the development of the watch along the way to sort of achieve this sort of like idealized version of what you were looking for?
For us, we either make the watch we want or we don't make it. And so,
as opposed to
we did
making a watch and then cutting stuff out to get it under a certain price point.
yeah. Challenges. I mean, there was one like happy accident challenge, and that was at the like very early prototyping stages. Initially, when we designed it, we thought we would use BGW9 for all the loomed components, for the bezel, numerals, for the dial, the GMT hand, the hands.
And then we got the prototype.
And we realized we live in a physical world with, physical limitations. And so, the very thin, tiny numerals on the bezel, BGW9 is one of the brightest looms you could use, and we love it. It has a nice blue glow to it, but it's not the brightest. C3, which has like a greenish glow, is a little bit brighter. And so we realized, okay, we're going to have to use C3 for this bezel, so we can get some visible glow, so it can like work in low light conditions. And that really gave us the opportunity then, we can match the loom on the bezel to the loom on the GMT hand to improve its low light visibility and utility.
Yeah, and
overall.
it ended up looking cooler than our original vision.
And it's a better watch for it. So, I mean, that's like the importance of prototyping. But yeah, so that was one happy challenge that we faced. But other than that, it's just...
Other than that, it's pretty much how we want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's really anything we would change about it.
Yeah. I mean, having talked to a lot of watch brands over the years about product development, it's very rare that you just have a watch turn out the way you want it from the beginning. It's really exciting you guys are releasing this watch. It's very impressive in person, and we've sort of chatted about this, off camera, and I'm confident this is going to do exceptionally well for you guys. So if you're interested in getting one, definitely go check out Laurier's website while you can. Before we end the interview, is there anything else that you guys can kind of tease that's coming down the pipeline? Any more plans for your line coming in 2021?
I mean, honestly, we're tired. We had a big year in 2020. Next year, I think we'll have a few new colorways, maybe a limited edition or two, but nothing as huge as what happened this year. We're still catching our breath.
Yeah, 2020 was definitely a big year for you guys between refreshing the lines, launching a chronograph, launching a GMT. I think you've done enough work for 2020 and maybe 2021 combined. So, so I think that's a great way to sort of end it. I really appreciate you guys coming on and joining us for the virtual fair. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon at the next physical Windup Watch Fair.
Yes, that'd be
Yes.
amazing. We miss
Yes.
it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you. Take care.